A shriek, sharp and piercing, tore through the tranquil Suffolk air, instantly silencing the chirping birds and rustling leaves of that fateful summer's day. It was harvest time in the village of Woolpit, sometime in the twilight years of the 12th century, and the sun beat down relentlessly on the hard-working reapers. Their scythes, usually an rhythmic extension of their toil, froze mid-swing as another cry, this one deeper, more guttural, echoed from the edge of St. Mary's Grove. Panic, a raw primal surge, rippled through the field. Was it a wolf, a bandit, or something far older, far more sinister, lurking in the ancient woods? The villagers, hardened by years of rural life, clutched their tools, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. They moved as one, a silent, tense wave, towards the source of the disturbance. What they found there, at the yawning mouth of one of the many wolf pits that dotted the landscape, deep, funnel-shaped traps dug to protect their livestock, would forever etch itself into the annals of local legend, and indeed, into the very fabric of unexplained history. It was not a wolf, nor a brigand, but something far more perplexing, far more terrifying in its sheer otherworldliness. Two figures, small and huddled, lay at the bottom of the pit. At first glance, they seemed like any lost children, perhaps fallen in during a mischievous game. But as the villagers edged closer, their gasps became choked, their murmurs dying in their throats. For these children were unlike any they had ever seen. Their skin, visible beneath their tattered, unfamiliar clothes, was a startling, vibrant shade of green, and that was just the beginning of the nightmare. The initial shock, a collective gasp of disbelief, soon gave way to a cacophony of panicked whispers. The children, a boy and a girl, both small, perhaps no older than 8 or 9, lay intertwined, their eyes wide with a terror that mirrored the villagers' own. But their fear was different. It was the terror of the utterly lost, the profoundly bewildered. One brave soul, a farmer named Richard de Calne, known for his level head and strong arm, slowly lowered himself into the pit. The air crackled with tension as he reached for the first child, the girl. Her skin, he later recounted, was cool to the touch, smooth but undeniably green, like the fresh leaves of spring, yet somehow alien. As he lifted her, a strange guttural language spilled from her lips, unintelligible and unsettling. The boy, still at the bottom, whimpered in the same unknown tongue, his emerald eyes fixed on the unfamiliar faces staring down at him. They were dressed in garments woven from a material no one recognized, a rough but finely spun fabric in colors that seemed to shift and shimmer in the sunlight. The villagers, a deeply religious and superstitious folk, struggled to reconcile what they saw with their understanding of the world. Had these children emerged from the Fey mounds, those ancient burial sites whispered to be gateways to other realms? Were they changelings, left in place of stolen human babes? Or was this a darker, more demonic manifestation? The very air around the pit seemed to vibrate with an unholy energy, a chill that had nothing to do with the summer sun. Richard, carefully cradling the green girl, passed her up to outstretched, trembling hands. Then, with a grunt, he hauled the boy from the depths. Both children were thin, their small frames almost translucent, as if they had traveled a great distance, or perhaps existed in a different dimension entirely. The journey back to the village was a silent procession of dread. The villagers walked in a tight, fearful cluster, keeping a wide berth from Maum. The initial shock of discovery gave way to a simmering cauldron of fear and speculation within Woolpit. The Green Children, housed in Richard de Calne's modest dwelling, became the focal point of every whispered conversation, every fearful glance. The village, usually a bustling hub of agricultural activity, took on an eerie quietness, a tension that hung thick in the air like an approaching storm. Mothers clutched their children closer, their eyes darting towards Richard's house, half expecting some unholy emanation to spill forth. Old men, their faces etched with the wisdom of generations, muttered darkly about ancient prophecies and forgotten spirits. The local priest, Father Michael, usually a beacon of calm and reason, found himself struggling to quell the rising tide of hysteria. He spoke of God's mysterious ways, of the innocent, but his words seemed hollow against the stark reality of the two green-skinned strangers. The children themselves offered no comfort. They huddled together, wide-eyed and silent, their strange language a constant unsettling murmur between them. They recoiled from human touch, their small bodies tensing at the approach of any villager, their verdant skin seeming to glow faintly in the dim light of the cottage. Their presence was a constant, stark reminder that the world was larger and far more mysterious than anyone in Woolpit had ever dared to imagine. Attempts to communicate were met with blank stares and the incomprehensible chatter. Gestures were useless. They understood nothing of the villagers' desperate attempts to bridge the chasm of their different worlds. This linguistic barrier only deepened the fear, fostering an unnerving sense of them being utterly alien, completely separate. Richard de Calne, despite the palpable fear emanating from his neighbors, tried to maintain a semblance of order. He was a man of the earth, practical and resolute. He saw not demons, but lost souls. Yet even he felt the tremor of unease that permeated his home. The children would not eat, not the hearty bread, nor the fresh vegetables, nor the succulent meats offered to them. They simply stared at the food, their small noses wrinkling, as if the very scent was repugnant. Their refusal to partake in human sustenance only fueled the darkest suspicions. Were they even truly human? Days bled into a week, then another. The villagers' fear, initially sharp and panicked, began to curdle into a more insidious dread. They started avoiding the lane where Richard lived, casting furtive glances, whispering hushed prayers. The very color of the children became a source of terror, a hue associated with nature, with life. Yet on their skin, it was an unnatural, almost sickly green. The children, too, began to show the strain. The boy, in particular, grew withdrawn, his emerald eyes dulling, his small frame becoming more fragile with each passing day. He seemed to shrink, as if fading from this world, while his sister, though equally bewildered, retained a flicker of defiance, a spark of resilience. The air in Woolpit was thick with unanswered questions, with unspoken fears. What would happen if these children, these green harbingers of the unknown, remained? Would their strangeness spread, infecting the very fabric of their simple, ordered lives? The villagers looked at each other, then back at Richard's house, a silent question hanging heavy in the air. How long could they endure this unsettling intrusion before their fear turned to something far more dangerous? And what would that something be? The most striking, and perhaps most terrifying aspect of the children, was undeniably their skin. A verdant, almost luminous green, it defied all natural explanation. It wasn't the pallor of sickness, nor the flush of health, but an entirely different shade, as if they had been steeped in an otherworldly dye. The villagers, familiar with every shade of human flesh, from the ruddy glow of health to the gray pallor of death, found this hue profoundly unsettling. It was an alien marker, a visible sign of their otherness. Their clothing, too, was a source of endless fascination and fear. Woven from an unknown material, it was rough yet surprisingly soft, and the colors, a muted, earthy palette, seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. It offered no clue to their origins, only deepened the mystery, suggesting a craft and a world utterly removed from anything known to 12th century Suffolk. But it was their language that truly sealed their isolation. A series of melodious yet utterly incomprehensible sounds, it flowed between the children like a secret stream. They spoke to each other in soft murmurs, their voices gentle but their words an unbreakable code. The villagers tried everything. Latin, the language of the church, the local dialect of English, even crude gestures. All were met with blank stares, or the children's own plaintive, green-tongued replies. This linguistic barrier created an immense chasm, deepening the fear and suspicion. If they could not communicate, how could their intentions be known? Were they harmless innocents, or something more sinister, biding their time? The inability to understand their words made them seem less human, more like strange, beautiful creatures from a forgotten fable. Father Michael, initially hopeful, grew increasingly frustrated. He believed in the power of the divine word, in the universal language of God. But these children seemed impervious to it. Their prayers, if they had any, were not of this world. They would often point upwards or towards the ground, uttering their strange syllables, as if trying to explain something vast and profound that the villagers were simply incapable of grasping. The children, in turn, seemed equally distressed by their inability to communicate. Their frustration manifested in quiet whimpers, in desperate pleading gestures, their emerald eyes welling with unshed tears. They were trapped, not just in a foreign land, but in a prison of silence, unable to bridge the gap between their world and this one. Richard de Calne, though unable to understand their words, observed them closely. He noticed that their language seemed to possess a musicality, a cadence that was both foreign and strangely beautiful. He wondered if it was a language tied to their green skin, a tongue spoken only by those of their peculiar hue. The mystery of their green skin and unknown language became a haunting refrain in Woolpit. It was a constant visible reminder that they were outsiders, beings from a place beyond the village's ken. And as the days turned into weeks, and the children continued to speak only to each other, the question of their true origin grew more urgent, more unsettling. For if their words held the key to their past, then that key remained tantalizingly, terrifyingly out of reach. What secrets did those emerald tongues conceal? And what horrors or wonders might they reveal if only someone could understand? One of the most immediate and pressing concerns for the villagers, once the initial shock and fear had somewhat subsided, was how to feed the green children. As the days wore on, their small bodies grew thinner, their emerald eyes more sunken, their movements slower. They simply refused all sustenance offered to them. Bread, a staple of every medieval diet, was ignored. Rich stews, freshly caught fish, sweet berries, all were presented, only to be turned away with a shudder of evident disgust. The children would turn their heads, their noses wrinkling, to their expressions conveying a profound revulsion. It was as if their very biology was incompatible with the food of this world. Richard de Calne, observing their gradual decline, grew increasingly desperate. He tried everything he could think of, offering them every conceivable edible item known to the village. Nothing. The boy in particular seemed to be fading rapidly, his spirit dimming with each passing hour of hunger. Then, one day, a breakthrough, as accidental as it was strange. One of Richard's servants, a kind and observant woman named Alice, was preparing a meal. She had just harvested a fresh batch of broad beans from the garden, still in their pods. As she began to shell them, the green girl who had been sitting quietly in a corner suddenly stirred. Her emerald eyes, previously dull and listless, sharpened, fixing on the beans. She uttered a small, eager sound in her strange language, and to Alice's astonishment, slowly, tentatively, approached the pile of legumes. She reached out a small green hand and picked up a pod, examining it with an intense curiosity. Alice, sensing a desperate chance, offered her another. The girl took it, her fingers carefully peeling back the tough outer shell, revealing the plump, pale green beans inside. She brought one to her mouth, cautiously, then another and another. A small, almost imperceptible sigh of contentment escaped her lips. The boy, observing his sister, immediately mimicked her actions. Soon, both children were eagerly shelling and eating the broad beans, their first taste of sustenance in days. It was a sight both miraculous and utterly baffling. Why broad beans? Why nothing else? From that day forward, broad beans became their primary, and for a long time, only food. They consumed them raw, with an almost frantic hunger, as if they were the nectar of their homeland. Other foods were occasionally tried, but always rejected. This peculiar diet only added another layer to their enigmatic existence, another sign of their fundamental difference. The villagers, relieved that the children were at least eating something, albeit an odd something, began to whisper anew. Were these beans a delicacy from their green land? Or was there something about their chemical composition that their unique bodies could process? It was a mystery that no one could answer, a dietary quirk that further cemented their status as beings from another world. The broad beans were a lifeline, pulling the children back from the brink of starvation. But they were also a constant, unsettling reminder of their profound otherness. Their hunger had been sated, but the hunger for understanding their true nature, their origins, remained a gnawing emptiness in the hearts and minds of the people of Woolpit. What did this strange diet truly signify? And what other astonishing differences lay beneath their green skin? The broad beans, while providing essential sustenance, could not stave off the inevitable for both children. Their bodies, accustomed to an unknown environment and an alien diet, reacted differently to the harsh realities of 12th century Suffolk. The boy, the younger and more fragile of the two, began to wither. Despite consuming the beans with a desperate eagerness, his health steadily declined. His emerald skin, once vibrant, grew dull, taking on a sickly, jaundiced hue. His movements became sluggish, his eyes clouded with a profound weariness. He rarely spoke, even to his sister, his strange language reduced to soft, mournful whimpers. He seemed to possess a deeper, more profound connection to whatever world they had left behind. The separation, the alienness of their new surroundings, weighed on him with an unbearable heaviness. He pined for his lost home, his spirit unable to adapt, his small body unable to cope with the transition. He was, in essence, dying of homesickness, a condition far beyond the understanding of the villagers. Within months of their discovery, the boy succumbed. He simply faded away, his last breath a barely audible sigh. The villagers, though saddened, were not entirely surprised. It had been clear for some time that he was not long for this world. His death, however, cast a pall over the village, a somber reminder of the uncanny, tragic nature of their discovery. He was buried quietly, his green skin now a pale imitation of its former glory, a silent testament to a life cut short by an incomprehensible journey. The girl, however, proved to be made of sterner stuff. While she grieved deeply for her brother, a remarkable transformation began to take hold. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the vibrant green of her skin began to fade. It was a gradual process, as if the pigment was being leached from her very being. Over the course of several months, her skin shifted from emerald to a more conventional, albeit still unusually pale, human tone. Concurrently, she began to adapt to her surroundings. The strange guttural language slowly gave way to hesitant, then increasingly confident, English words. She learned by listening, by mimicking, her sharp mind absorbing the sounds and meanings of her new tongue. Richard de Calne, ever patient, became her primary teacher, his gentle guidance helping her navigate the complexities of her new world. Her diet, too, expanded beyond the broad beans. She cautiously tried other foods, gradually acquiring a taste for the local fare. She learned to help with household chores, her initial shyness giving way to a quiet industriousness. She learned the customs, the rhythms of village life, blending in day by day, more and more with the people around her. Her adaptation was not without its struggles. There were moments of profound sadness, of longing for her lost brother and her forgotten home. But her resilience, her innate will to survive, propelled her forward. She became known as Agnes, a new name for a new life, a life that was slowly, painstakingly, becoming human. The contrast between the two children was stark and profound. One, unable to detach from his origins, perished. The other, embracing her new reality, thrived. But even as Agnes grew and adapted, the memory of her green skin, her alien language, and the brother who could not survive, lingered. And with her newfound ability to speak English, the villagers harbored a desperate hope that she might finally reveal the secrets of her extraordinary past. What tales, wonders, or terrors would she finally unveil, now that the language barrier had crumbled? The answer would be as astonishing as her very existence. With the fading of her green skin and the blossoming of her English tongue, Agnes became the living bridge between two impossible worlds. The villagers, now less fearful and more openly curious, pressed her for answers about her origins. And Agnes, still with a touch of melancholy in her eyes, finally began to speak. Her story, recounted in halting but increasingly clear English, painted a vivid, yet utterly fantastical picture. She described a land of perpetual twilight, a place where the sun never truly shone, but was instead bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. A world, she explained, where everyone shared her former green hue. She called this place the land of St. Martin, a land where, she claimed, the people lived underground, emerging only to tend their crops in the dim, otherworldly light. Their existence was one of quiet harmony, focused on their strange agriculture and the gentle hum of their subterranean lives. She spoke of a mysterious, resounding sound, like the pita, ailing of bells, that had captivated her and her brother. Drawn by an irresistible curiosity, they had followed the sound, venturing deeper and deeper into what she described as a cavern or a passage. This passage, she said, was long and winding, growing ever darker until they were engulfed in complete blackness. Then, a sudden, blinding light. They had emerged, disoriented and terrified, into the scorching sun of Woolpit's harvest field. The unfamiliar brightness, the intense heat, and the sudden shift from their twilight world to this harsh, alien one had overwhelmed them. They had stumbled, bewildered, until they fell into the wolf pit, a dark refuge from the overwhelming light. She explained their diet of broad beans, confirming that these were a staple crop in the land of St. Martin, and the only food their bodies were accustomed to. The other foods of Woolpit, she said, tasted bitter and unnatural to them, causing discomfort and distress. Her tale, delivered with a childlike sincerity, astonished the villagers. A land of green people, living underground, lit by an unseen sun, and connected to their world by a mysterious passage. It sounded like the wildest of fairy tales, a fantastical realm ripped from the pages of ancient lore. Yet, the evidence of her former green skin, her initial inability to eat anything but beans, and the baffling circumstances of their arrival made her story impossibly compelling. Richard de Calny, ever the pragmatic observer, recorded her account diligently. He saw no reason to doubt her words. Her innocence and sincerity shone through. But for the others, the story sparked a renewed sense of wonder and fear. Could such a place truly exist? A hidden world, just beneath their feet, or perhaps beyond some unseen veil? Agnes grew into womanhood in Woolpit, living a long and reportedly respectable life, even marrying a local man. But she never forgot the land of St. Martin. The memory of her emerald home, her lost brother, and the echoing bells that had called them away remained etched in her soul, a haunting whisper of a world forever beyond reach. Her story, passed down through generations, became the bedrock of the legend, the tantalizing first-hand account of the impotent Sybil. But was it merely the confused memory of a traumatized child, a fantastical coping mechanism, or was Agnes, the green girl of Woolpit, an actual emissary from a place beyond human comprehension, a living testament to worlds yet undiscovered? The questions lingered, echoing through the centuries, demanding explanation. Agnes's extraordinary account, recorded by chroniclers like William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall, ensured the legend of the Green Children of Woolpit would endure through the ages. But her story, while fascinating, only deepened the mystery, inspiring centuries of speculation and countless attempts to explain the inexplicable. The supernatural theory. In the immediate aftermath, the most prevalent explanation revolved around the supernatural. For a 12th century mind, the concept of fairies, sprites, and creatures from the underworld was not just folklore, but a very real possibility. The children's green skin, Their strange language and their sudden emergence from the earth fit perfectly within the framework of Fae lore. They were seen as changelings, or perhaps denizens of an enchanted realm, accidentally straying into the human world. Agnes's description of a twilight land and subterranean existence only fueled these beliefs, suggesting a connection to the other world believed to exist parallel to our own. This explanation, while lacking scientific grounding, offered a comfortingly familiar framework for an otherwise terrifying event. The alien parallel world hypothesis. As scientific understanding evolved, so too did the theories. In more modern times, particularly in the 20th century, the advent of science fiction and the concept of multiple dimensions opened new avenues for explanation. Could the children have been extraterrestrial visitors, perhaps exposed to a unique atmosphere that altered their pigmentation? Or, more compellingly, were they travelers from a parallel dimension, a world existing alongside our own, where evolution had taken a slightly different path, resulting in green-skinned humanoids and an underground existence? Agnes's talk of a land of St. Martin could be interpreted not as a geographical location on Earth, but a completely different plane of reality, a world where the sun's light filtered differently, creating perpetual twilight. This theory posits a cosmic or multidimensional accident, a tear in the fabric of space-time that briefly brought two disparate realities into contact. Despite the allure of the fantastical, many have sought more grounded, scientific explanations for the Green Children. The most widely accepted scientific theory suggests the children suffered from chlorosis, also known as green sickness. This condition, caused by severe iron deficiency anemia, was relatively common in medieval times due to poor diet. Sufferers often develop a greenish tinge to their skin, along with lethargy and weakness. Their strange diet of broad beans could be explained by their being particularly sensitive to or craving specific nutrients found within them. Their disorientation and inability to speak English would be consistent with severe malnutrition and having been genuinely lost. Agnes's eventual adaptation and fading green color would then correspond to her recovery and improved diet. However, this theory struggles to explain the instantaneous appearance from a pit, their unknown language, and Agnes's consistent story of a twilight world. Other, less prominent medical theories include arsenic poisoning, which can cause skin discoloration, or pellagra, a vitamin deficiency, though these are generally less convincing due to the specific green aspect. A more pragmatic, albeit still challenging, explanation proposes the children were simply foreign, perhaps Flemish orphans, who had wandered into the area. Their unknown language would simply be a foreign tongue, and their green skin a result of extreme malnutrition or exposure to some natural pigment. Woolpit, being in East Anglia, was not far from areas with Flemish communities. This theory, however, again struggles with the simultaneous green and foreign language aspects, and the miraculous appearance from a pit. Finally, some argue that the story itself is primarily a piece of folklore, perhaps built upon a kernel of truth, but heavily embellished over time. The green aspect, the underground world, and the bells could all be symbolic elements, woven into a narrative to explain a strange event in a way that resonated with the cultural beliefs of the time. The very act of recounting and retelling transforms history into legend. Each theory, from the magical to the mundane, attempts to fill the void of the unknown, to impose order on a fundamentally chaotic event. But none completely satisfy, leaving tantalizing gaps, unexplained anomalies, and a lingering sense that the true answer might forever elude us. The Green Children of Woolpit remain an emerald enigma, reflecting back the evolving anxieties and curiosities of humanity through the ages. And it is this enduring mystery, this stubborn refusal to be neatly categorized, that ensures their story continues to captivate, continuing to haunt our collective imagination. Centuries have passed since the Green Children emerged from the earth near Woolpit. The medieval world that greeted them is long gone, replaced by sprawling cities, technological marvels, and an ever-expanding understanding of the universe. Yet, the legend of the Green Children of Woolpit refuses to fade. It lingers in the collective consciousness, a ghost story whispered through the annals of history, a perennial favorite for those who seek the unexplained. Why does this particular tale, among countless other forgotten folklores, continue to resonate so deeply? Firstly, it preys on our fundamental human fear of the unknown. The Green Children represented everything alien and inexplicable. They were a disruption to the ordered world, a tangible manifestation of the other. In an age before global travel and scientific exploration, their very existence challenged the known boundaries of reality. Even today, in our seemingly omniscient digital age, the idea of hidden worlds, of beings unlike us, still holds a profound, unsettling power. The story taps into a deep-seated apprehension that there are forces, dimensions, or forms of life just beyond our grasp, waiting to breach the veil. Secondly, the story is incredibly well documented for its time. Unlike many fleeting legends, the accounts of William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall lend it a veneer of authenticity. These were not mere campfire tales. They were recorded by respected chroniclers, lending weight and credibility to the fantastical events. This blend of meticulous historical record and unbelievable content creates an irresistible paradox, forcing us to grapple with the question, what if it was true? Thirdly, the story offers no definitive, universally accepted explanation. Every theory, from chlorosis to parallel dimensions, leaves unanswered questions, tantalizing gaps that ensure the mystery endure. The lack of a neat resolution allows the imagination to run wild, inviting each generation to impose its own interpretations and anxieties onto the emerald enigma. It is a puzzle missing a crucial piece, and our human nature compels us to try and find it. Furthermore, the Green Children represent a powerful symbol of displacement and adaptation. The boy, unable to adjust, perishes. The girl, Agnes, transforms, literally shedding her old skin to embrace a new life. This narrative arc speaks to the universal human experience of encountering the foreign, of loss, and of the struggle to belong. It's a poignant tale of survival and assimilation, wrapped in the cloak of an extraordinary mystery. Finally, the legend of Woolpit challenges our perceived understanding of reality. It asks us to consider that the world is far more complex, far more fantastical, than our scientific models currently allow. It whispers of hidden histories, of forgotten gateways, of the profound limitations of human perception. It reminds us that even in our most enlightened moments, there is still wonder, still magic, and still an abundance of things we simply do not comprehend. The legacy of the Green Children of Woolpit is not just a strange anecdote from a distant past. It is a mirror reflecting our own curiosity, our fear of the alien, and our enduring fascination with the boundaries of existence. They emerged from a pit, green and bewildered, but they stepped into history, forever challenging us to look beyond the mundane, to question what we know, and to forever wonder about the worlds that might lie just beyond our sight. And as long as there are questions without answers, as long as there is darkness to explore and light to chase, the Emerald Children will continue to haunt our dreams, a chilling testament to the infinite strangeness of our universe. They are a story etched into the very earth of Suffolk, a whisper carried on the winds of time, asking us still, what if? What if the impossible truly happened? And what other marvels or horrors lie just beneath the surface of our known world, waiting for their own dramatic unveiling?